The year was 2003. We saw a multitude of film and television releases that shaped mainstream pop culture, of course, but I want to talk about the gay stuff. There was the release of Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. This film is widely cited as the bisexual awakening of many a millennial, which I get it. Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom are gorgeous, and their mouths are always sort of half open with yearning. The insanely successful Wicked, based off the classic L. Frank Baum novel Wizard of Oz, made its smash debut on Broadway. The iconic sequel and, dare I say, masterpiece, Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, was released in theaters. In television, we saw the debuts of Queer Eye for the Straight Guy on Bravo, America's Next Top Model on UPN.
I don't know, I just don't think this is great for me. I don't want to do it. I want to go home. I can't take the pressure of it.
But don't you think any job interview...
And The Simple Life on Fox. Welcome back to the channel. I wanted to start this series for a couple reasons. Firstly, my friends are tired of me yapping about stuff like this, so I just come online and yap to all of you, and hopefully some of y'all resonate or even learn something. I've been watching mainstream films my entire life, and I've realized in rewatching them and in conversations with a lot of straight people that the things that I resonate with heavily and pick up on in these films are gay coded. And yeah, now we have more articles and commentaries about these films, but this is all upon reflection. When I watched these for the first time as a little F slur, I was losing my little mind. And I think what's actually happening is we've entered a new decade, definitely overshadowed by a worldwide pandemic, but now we can look back on older media and stuff as adults and sort of pick it apart and draw meaning from certain things now that we are older and smarter. And for the gays, we're sort of rediscovering or discovering camp. For example,
Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else.
Now, if this scene is something that stuck with you and is something that you often quote when you think of an X-Men movie, you too just might be a little fruity. Now, the mainstream thinks that these lines are just corny and out of place, and they are, but they're also camp. Now, for those of you who don't know the definition of camp, it is as follows. Camp is an aesthetic and sensibility that regards something as appealing or amusing because of its heightened level of artifice, affectation, and exaggeration, especially when there's also a playful or ironic element. Now, let's try to break this down a little further. Some hot gay scholars, now I don't know if they're hot, I'm just hoping, they suggest that gay men in particular gravitate towards camp as a way to navigate social norms and express themselves, especially in times when being openly gay was more challenging, as camp tends to mirror that experience and struggle. There are a few characteristics of camp, and here are some examples.
Transsexual, Transylvania.
Emphasizing the artificial and theatrical, often presenting things in a heightened, exaggerated way, like Batman, villains Catwoman and Penguin being portrayed as literal cat and penguin. Both these performances are exaggerated, and the entire film stylistically is a Tim Burton wet dream, which I personally don't mind because Batman to me has always been camp right up until the release of Batman Begins, where they started to sort of take it more seriously.
There's nothing to it.
Camp is often self-aware and ironic, reveling in its own artificiality. Like in the Brady Bunch movie, where they take the wholesome 70s sitcom family and juxtapose them against contemporary and grungy 90s Los Angeles.
Sure, Jan.
Who cares about sleep when you can snooze in school? You'll never get to college, but you'll sure look cool.
Performances in film often involve stylized movements and theatrical presentation, like the erratic and jarring outbursts of a young drifter, Nomi, who travels to Las Vegas to claw her way to the top of the Las Vegas showgirl scene. Camp can involve taking elements from both high art and popular culture and combining them in unexpected ways, like adapting popular culture like comic books and blending genres like science fiction and noir.
Buried in my pretty flesh, you have pretty skin.
Camp can involve finding beauty or enjoyment in things that are often considered to be in poor taste or bad, like the continued celebration of critically maligned Catwoman that swept the Razzies that year.
I'll do what my mother taught me, and I'll stand here graciously. I'll take the criticism, take it as a lesson learned, and I hope to God I never see these people ever again.
Now, let me know if you want a video breaking down all the themes in that film. I think that'd be fun. And I love Catwoman. Things are generally considered camp when they turn traditional art rules upside down, playing with ideas of beauty, value, and taste, and inviting people to enjoy art in a fun, unconventional way. When Storm asks Toad about lightning, a question connected to seemingly nothing, while she's blowing the glass out of windows around her and her wig is blowing wildly in the air, that's camp. And I think that's maybe why the straight mainstream really can't relate. It's sort of like the girls who get it, you know? Today, I'll be breaking down all the gay stuff in X2 or X2 X-Men United. Now, for the purpose of this video, I will be referring to this movie solely as X2 because it's faster to say, and this is the title that I know this movie by, as the elongated title came out a little after the film was released. And I want to make a couple things clear right up top. 1, I am not an expert. 2, I will be going through the plot of this film heavily, so spoilers. Now, if you would like to watch this film, which I suggest you do, it is, as of recording of this video, streaming on Disney Plus in America. Now that that's out of the way, grab some snacks and some water, and let's get into it. Now, before we get into the gay of it all, I want to add a little production backstory. Now, X2 went into development almost immediately after the first film, as its success really legitimized 20th Century Fox's ability to produce a well-written superhero movie. Now, there were multiple scripts written by David Hayter and Zach Penn, who later just essentially built off what was successful about the first film and compiled it into one screenplay. 2 additional writers were brought on to rewrite and change certain elements, like the characterization of Beast. Now, in early drafts, Beast was portrayed as a knowledgeable expert on mutant issues, debating the necessity of a Mutant Registration Act. Angel was also in these early drafts as a prisoner of William Stryker in a Weapon X experiment that ultimately transforms him into Archangel. At one point, Sentinels and the Danger Room were set to make a big screen appearance until Fox said, "Do y'all have Sentinels and Danger Room money?" Which was okay because all of this ultimately appeared in the sequel. X2 adapted the Return to Weapon X and God Loves Man Kills comic book storylines. Now, quick summary of the two. Return to Weapon X issues 7 through 12 sees Wolverine go on his solo journey to search for the organization that made him the lean, mean killing machine he is. And while he's gone, Weapon X abducts the X-Men and forces them into some slave labor situation for the US government. The God Loves Man Kills storyline sees the X-Men go up against William Stryker, depicted in this comic series as a right-wing televangelist, leading an ideological movement to eradicate mutants like the X-Men, seeing them as ungodly and a threat to mankind. This ultimately forces the X-Men to team up with Magneto to stop Stryker. Now, this series is intense as hell. It starts with the murder of 2 little mutant kids by a group called the Purifiers. Please give it a read, it's excellent. With the script finalized, filming began in June 2002 in Vancouver, British Columbia, with Bryan Singer returned to direct. And a little more on him later. The main cast from the first film were all back. Patrick Stewart as Professor Xavier, Ian McKellen as Magneto, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, Famke Janssen as Jean Grey, Halle Berry as Storm, no accent this time, thank you very much. James Marden also returns as Cyclops, Rebecca Romaine Stamos as Mystique, Sean Ashmore as Iceman, and Anna Paquin as Rogue. Now, X2 saw newcomers, adding Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler, Aaron Stafford as Pyro, Kelly Hu as Lady Deathstrike, Daniel Cudmore as Colossus, as well as Brian Cox as Colonel William Stryker. Filming ended 5 months later in November 2002, and on May 26, 2003, X2 was released. The film grossed a whopping $407 million worldwide against a budget of $125 million, making it the 9th highest grossing film of 2003. Now, this is where it's going to start to get real gay. Let's talk about that plot. To understand the queer subtext and text in X2, I think we first need to address the central metaphor that defines the X-Men franchise as a whole. Mutants. Now, mutants are a marginalized group of humans born with abilities or genetic mutations that make them different from regular humans. These mutations often manifest in powers or abilities that may or may not come with physical deformities. These mutations often make them feared, hated, and ostracized from society. Culturally, X2 was released at the top of the millennium, right on the heels of 9/11. Now, why is this relevant? Well, in the US specifically, there was an intense period of heightened security concerns and an increased fear of the other. The treatments of mutants as a threat in X2 directly mirrored the societal anxieties and preyed upon fears about immigration, national security concerns, and the otherness of certain groups, specifically Muslims and other Middle Eastern immigrants, and even Middle Eastern US citizens. In fact, the FBI reported that the number of anti-Muslim hate crimes rose from 28 in 2000 to 481 in 2001, a 17-fold increase. In fact, if you head to the Department of Justice's page, there is a compilation of post-9/11 discriminatory backlash reports, including incidents involving physical violence, discrimination, and even one report of someone throwing a Molotov cocktail at a mosque where children were playing outside. Americans were scared and, of course, uneducated, and the media, with help from our government, gave people a target: Middle Eastern people, or oftentimes anyone who was even perceived to be of Middle Eastern descent. Does that sound familiar? There was also a shift in the depiction of Middle Eastern people in mainstream film and TV. Post 9/11, we got terrorists and foreign threats, where the American hero swoops in and saves the day. Now, 9/11 really shifted America's views and sentiments toward a specific group of people in such a dangerous way. Like, this was happening over 20 years ago, too. It's not like there's like a pattern that we all have to have a discussion about at some point. With all that context, let's dive into the plot. Now, X2 opens with the mutant Nightcrawler bamfing or teleporting through the halls of the White House in a still amazing action sequence to any superhero movie ever. Like, I think the only thing that's CG in this entire sequence is Nightcrawler teleporting. Like, these stunt doubles are being tossed every which way on wires for real. And I know this because I remember on Fox, before the movie was released, they had this special that like broke down this intro sequence, by the way, and this was pre-YouTube, so you kind of had to like be there to see it. I wonder if somebody uploaded it on YouTube. I'm actually gonna check after I'm done recording this video. Nightcrawler is after the president for an unknown reason. He makes quick work of the entire Secret Service and is close to straight up murdering the president before he's shot in the shoulder and teleports out of the Oval Office. He drops a dagger with a ribbon tied around the handle reading "Mutant Freedom Now." Elsewhere, having left the X Mansion at the end of the first film, Wolverine is wandering around the seemingly abandoned military base at Alkali Lake and finds nothing but snow and disappointment. Meanwhile, the X-Men are on a school field trip at the museum, where Jean Grey is seen having issues with controlling her psionic powers. Now, I was so excited that there was mention of this because that meant that the Phoenix Force was somewhere on the other side of this conversation. Iceman, Rogue, and Pyro are in the food court, just being teens. And let's take a moment right now to talk about the fashion of this movie, which brings us to... What's your flavor? Tell me what's your flavor? We can't have a conversation about gay themes and not bring up fashion. Like, let's talk about these X suits. Kevin Feige recently revealed in an interview, quote, "There were studio execs in charge who knew that The Matrix had been a big hit and they wore black leather, so they said, put the X-Men in black leather." Now, costume designer Louise Mingenbach reflected early 2000s fashion trends. Tailored blazers, straight leg pants, leather pieces, and a more formal approach to casual wear. Now, Louise, I think, perfectly balanced superhero fantasism with believable contemporary fashion sensibilities, creating looks that felt both extraordinary and grounded against the real world 2000s. And the haircuts, baby. Jean Grey's little haircut, Storm's wig, Vidal Sassoon down. And look at the makeup, the subtle browns and bronzer on the eyes. Like the lips were either like a nude or like a soft pink. Everything was good. Hats off to Louise. You did your thing, girl. So, at the museum, these bullies who are all too model-like to be bullies harass the trio, snatching Pyro's lighter, and Pyro literally just sets this boy on fire. Bobby remedies this, or tries to, by extinguishing the fire with his ice powers, which freaks everybody out in the food court. Just then, everybody freezes except for the mutants, and in rolls Professor X. So dramatic. He beckons the mutants to him as news of the assassination attempt on the president is all over the news, and people are starting to point the fingers at mutants. Back at the X Mansion, Professor X uses Cerebro to locate the mutant responsible for the attack on the president and sends Storm and Jean Grey to swoop him up and question him. They show up in their John Paul Gaultier outfits and find out that mutants are being captured and experimented on, ultimately being administered a mind control drug and being forced to do terrible things. Elsewhere, Professor X and Cyclops head to Magneto's Supermax plastic prison that hovers over nothing. Like, set design went off here. This looks amazing. We used to make movies, y'all. At the same time, Colonel William Stryker meets with the president and Senator Kelly, who is really Mystique, and convinces him to give approval to investigate the X Mansion and all the mutants who reside there. Now, I find it very characteristic of Mystique to hear about an upcoming attack on mutants and not bat an eyelash. But as soon as she hears Magneto's name mentioned, she's like, oh, I gotta go get him. Girl, she gets my damn nerves. But that's Mystique. That's her. She don't play about her man. Magneto meets with Professor X and tells him that he was mind controlled and has told Stryker everything. Now, Professor X tries to escape, but is gassed out, and Cyclops is immediately dispatched by Lady Deathstrike. And side note, look at her outfit. It's so sleek, so stylish, and also this actress's face card, get into it. She is gorgeous. Stryker's military forces immediately evade the expansion, and before we get into this, we have
Hey Grandma, I'm gay.
The infamous soda pop scene between Iceman and Wolverine. Now, it's the middle of the night, and Wolverine, who can't sleep, enters the kitchen to find Iceman, who also can't sleep. Now, Wolverine enters wearing the tightest tank top you've ever seen on a man, and jeans that hug him in all the right places. He's looking for beer, and Iceman is understandably so, like, this is a Wendy's. So he settles on soda. But the soda is room temp. However, will he cope? Now, let me just play the bit of the scene and hope that it passes the copyright check, because I really feel like you all need to see it to get the full gag.
Got any beer?
This is a school.
So that's a no?
Yeah, that's a no.
Got anything other than chocolate milk?
There should be some soda in that small cupboard.
Thanks.
No problem.
Y'all, there is no hetero explanation for this scene. The eye contact, the flirty banter. Now, why not just simply touch the soda bottle or hover a hand over the top? You blow on it while maintaining eye contact with this sexy ass Wolverine with his tight tank top and slight little waist. Gay. Now, canonically, Iceman did ultimately come out in all new X-Men 2012 issue, I believe 40. Now, I know this because I've read all the issues as soon as I heard the news. This definitely made me pay more attention to Bobby Drake because, to be honest, he's never really stood out to me, especially against all the other heavy hitters. But now that he's a big old homo, I am invested. And it's so easy to pull me in, you know, just like make it gay. Like, that's all it takes. Stryker's men are running through the mansion, tranquilizing and abducting the mutant children, and Wolverine and Iceman are alerted of this by a mutant child who has a sonic screaming ability. Wolverine then does what he does best, single-handedly destroying the majority of these military invaders. And this film escapes an R rating because there's no blood. Fun fact.
I'm too sexy for my love, too sexy for my love, love's going to leave me.
Colossus, big, sexy, almost always shirtless. That's all. Like, I know this is probably for the girls, but the gays got fed as well. This absolute unit was running through the halls of the X Mansion. And I just, let me keep it cute. Wolverine is sidetracked by Stryker, who seemingly knows him. He goes to join him, but Iceman makes a wall of solid ice between them. And this was a really cool effect. Stryker blows the wall down, and Wolverine, Pyro, and Iceman, and Rogue are already gone, having escaped in the many tunnels through the mansion. Now, look at this. It looks like they really threw down big, real chunks of what I'm assuming is dry ice. Such a good touch. Mystique, in her rare human form, seduces and drugs the guard who works at Magneto's prison and then straight up injects him with pure iron. How the hell did that not kill him? At this point, she's already discovered schematics for Cerebro that Stryker undoubtedly got from Magneto. And on the run, Wolverine, Iceman, Rogue, and Pyro head to Iceman's house as his family lives in the area. Now, Bobby's entire arc in this film is the uncertainty around his family dynamic amidst his mutant identity, which we'll get to in a moment. But also, Iceman in this film is a teen boy who loves his girlfriend, but cannot be intimate with her. Now, we know this is because of Rogue's energy absorption with skin-to-skin contact, but on a surface level, it's giving closeted gay teen. Now, I've placed an asterisk in this one due to the fact that the lack of contact isn't on Iceman's part. But it's still an interesting sort of like concept to explore, you know? Iceman's parents return and see 1 million people in their house and justifiably freak out. Iceman decides to come clean with his parents about who he really is and what Professor X's school really is. This is literally a coming out scene in every sense of that term. Iceman's mother even says this.
Have you tried not being a mutant?
Now, this is a common response being depicted in TV and film during coming out scenes. Notable media includes shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I mean, have you tried not being a Slayer?
Mom.
Iceman's little brother, Ronnie, who has fallen prey to anti-mutant propaganda. Very Joe Rogan, Andrew Tate in this universe, calls the cops alleging that mutants are holding his family hostage. The cops show up and in true cop fashion, they immediately shoot someone. Wolverine, right in the head, mistaking his adamantium claws for knives. Pyro sees what the humans are capable of and goes ape shit on these cops, blowing up several police cruisers and hurling a couple fireballs at officers. We just watched the radicalization of a young mutant, really skillfully done. Rogue absorbs Pyro's powers, extinguishing the flames, engulfing police cars, just as Storm and Jean Grey arrive in the X-Jet with Nightcrawler. Wolverine regenerates and Iceman watches as his family sees him leave with the mutants, depicting a sort of disowning that often comes with coming out. The X-Men flee by X-Jet and are chased by the military who have missiles locked onto them. In one of the very few really fucking cool big screen uses of her powers, Storm summons like 10 tornadoes to knock down the fighter jets. But before the last jet pilot ejects, he sends out 2 heat-seeking missiles toward the X-Jet, and Jean Grey uses her powers to stop one. But there's a second one that rips the top off the jet, and Rogue, who was struggling with her seatbelt before, is sucked out the top of the jet. Nightcrawler bamfs and retrieves her, just as Storm and Jean lose control of the jet as it hurls toward the ground. It's stopped by none other than the newly freed Magneto, who is standing with Mystique. Now, Magneto explains to the X-Men that Colonel Stryker has abducted Professor X and has built a replica of Cerebro and intends to use Professor X to telepathically kill every mutant on the planet. He also tells Wolverine that Stryker was the one who grafted adamantium to his bones and also is the one who gave him amnesia. And Magneto, why would you tell him this? At a very crucial point in this journey where you have to have an alliance and go save these little mutant children, but also stop William Stryker from killing all mutants. You're like, oh, by the way, Wolverine, everything that you was looking for, this man's the answer. Anyway, there's also this great scene with Nightcrawler and Mystique where he asks Mystique about her powers.
Then why not stay in disguise all the time? Look like everyone else.
Because we shouldn't have to.
We simply shouldn't have to hide who we are because others may be uncomfortable. Now, back at Alkali Lake, which is an old army base entirely underground at the base of a dam, Stryker reveals that his son, a mind-controlling mutant whose spinal fluid he used to control mutants, will be the one to force Professor X to do his bidding. As Wolverine, Mystique infiltrates the base and lets everyone in. Very iconic. Magneto and Mystique head to Cerebro to stop Professor X, while Nightcrawler and Storm head to free the captured mutants. Jean Grey fights off a mind-controlled Cyclops, getting injured in the process as well as damaging the structure of the dam. Wolverine wanders to the adamantium lab where he gets fragments of his memory flashing back to him. But this is cut short when he's attacked by Lady Deathstrike, who he fights, but she immediately heals.
Holy shit.
And she has beaten his ass, y'all. Their fight concludes when Wolverine injects her with pure adamantium. He then chases Stryker, who is trying to flee Alkali Lake as it's about to blow. Now, Wolverine chains Stryker to his helicopter, telling him,
if we die, you die.
Mystique, having reached Cerebro, impersonates Stryker, telling his son to instruct Professor X to kill all the humans instead. Of course, Magneto is still Magneto. Nightcrawler teleports inside Cerebro and Storm creates a snowstorm, breaking Professor X of his mind control. The X-Men flee the dam as water engulfs it. Now, Wolverine is told by Stryker that he will tell him everything he needs to know if he ditches the mutant kids and goes with him. Wolverine says absolutely not and leaves him to die. And that's one thing that I love about this character is that, like, Wolverine hates most people, places, and things, but he's always down to kill to protect children. A grumpy caretaker, if you will. Now, everyone tries to leave, but the X-Jet loses all power and struggles to take flight as flood water rushes toward them. Jean sneaks, quietly hobbles off the X-Jet and speaks telepathically to Professor X, wishing the team goodbye. She holds back the water and raises the jet above as flames start to erupt from her body. She lets go and allows the flooding water to crash down upon her. Baller move to kill one of the main X-Men. That must have been a crazy flight back home, y'all. Could y'all imagine? Later, the X-Men give Stryker's files to the president, and Xavier warns him that humans and mutants must work together to build peace, a sort of ongoing effort to grow together as a people. Now, back at the school, Professor X, Cyclops, and Wolverine remember Jean. Xavier sort of looks out the window knowingly and begins to just hold his class. The last image is of a bird-like shape flying over the flooded Alkali Lake. The end. This is probably one of my favorite X-Men films in the entire franchise. It had everything. A great story, a compelling villain, a million action sequences, and oh so much gay subtext. The critical response to X2 was overwhelmingly positive. X2 continued to cement 20th Century Fox's superhero movies as an essential part of pop culture and became the ones to beat. Its box office performance was massively successful, and it had a lasting effect on the superhero genre as a whole, as well as in popular culture, specifically in the context of LGBTQ+ themes and the broader themes of identity and marginalization. X2 was a great vehicle to explore social issues through the lens of superhero fantasy, and we can definitely see its influence in later superhero films that also deal with themes that reflected societal norms. Now, the gay theme specifically can be attributed to the overall metaphor of being other. Some have alleged it's due to the director Bryan Singer being queer, bisexual to be exact, and I usually don't like to bring him up because of just Google Bryan Singer controversies. It's a whole thing. On a lighter note, in 2024, an article in Deadline quotes Alan Cumming, who portrayed Nightcrawler and will be back in Marvel's Avengers Doomsday, saying that X2 is his gayest film. Vindication. He says, quote, "It's got a queer director, lots of queer actors in it, and I love the fact that something so mainstream and so in the comic book world is so queer." He goes on to say, "It's an allegory about queerness, about people having these great gifts that they have to hide to exist. Queer people understand what that's all about." I was so excited while reading that. Firstly, I love Alan Cumming, and one of my friends said that when she lived in New York, she ran into him in a random bar and they started just chatting for like an hour. Lovely man, simply the best. Secondly, it's being said. Now, I'm not saying no one has ever said this about this movie. I'm just saying it's not being really discussed in the mainstream hetero superhero circles. I know this because whenever I say X2 is gay as hell in front of nerds, they're very quick to disagree with me and make it seem like I'm just wanting things to be gay. Later, one of X2's screenwriters, David Hayter, said in a later article in Variety, quote, "I was thrilled Alan Cumming called X2 the gayest film he'd ever worked on. It made me really happy." He continues, "I'm glad we did right by him. He's such an icon for gay rights." Ian McKellen also really recognized the allegory of it from a gay perspective. Hayter adds, "The team's goal for the X-Men movies was to appeal to anyone who faced hatred or exclusion or judgment and still felt compelled to do the right thing." Now he gets it. And I trust David Hayter because he wrote Watchmen, a darker alternate history superhero film that dealt with huge themes of moralistic versus utilitarian ethics, empowerment, nihilism, and meaning. And this is sort of why I revere this film so much. It has gay cultural themes as well as also queer elements throughout. And I also like how so much of it's shot like a comic strip. The musical score is big and orchestral. The stunts are top tier. The CG is all throughout this movie. I'm not going to sit here and try to say it's not, but I think it's used as more of a garnish or a transition. The whole movie doesn't entirely rely on it. But that's enough for my love for the film. Now, what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And stay tuned because there are a lot of films that are gay coded. That's all I want to say about this movie. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye.